So today, we're clearly talking about Sonic 2, as you saw by the title, or the thumbnail, whatever it is. And of course, it's not going to be super long, I expect it to be, but we're going to go through as best as we can. I'm Soul Binku, and okay, do the thing? Okay, so I know this is supposed to be a game apologist-like video, but I just can't handle doing this for so long. It's pretty easy because I've done it before in the past, but now I've entered my pariah era, so I'm pretty sure it's going to be very hard for me to take that away. So this will be formatted a little bit like a game apologist video, but also it's going to be mostly like a pariah video. So let's actually just talk about Sonic 2. To start off, we're going to talk about the best way to play the game, and that is, of course, Sonic 2 Absolute. It's basically made by the same creators who made Sonic 1 Forever, and I'm fucking waiting for them to make their Sonic CD remake because I feel like they're making it, and they had a trailer for it and everything, and I'm waiting for it. Please make it, please. I need that so I can make this video. I don't want to use this freaking mobile app shit. But besides that, I do want to say that Sonic 2 Absolute is definitely the best way to play the game. I know Pariah had a different suggestion in his Sonic 2 video, but I'm not going to be using that here because there's really no need, because Sonic 2 Absolute is better, and he even puts it in his description that it's way better than it was in there. Now, so we don't waste too much time, let's actually go into the game itself. I've pretty much already explained every mechanic, and Pariah's already pretty much explained every mechanic in his original Sonic 1 video, so if you've watched those, I don't need to say anything else. The only thing I need to go over here is some of the new stuff in here. So let's talk about taking out all the speed caps that you would get after Sonic 2, and basically let's talk about how to actually just play the game normally. With it, it's not that different. Everything I pretty much went over in Sonic 1 is pretty much the same. The only thing that's different here is that we're going to talk about air drag. With air drag, it's basically the idea of, as you can see here, where I'm running straight here, you can see I'm getting all this speed, but when I eventually jump in the air, I lose all that speed and go back to my base speed. Now, this is the idea that I'm going to be getting into with this entire video about air drag, because air drag is actually pretty interesting in Sonic in general, and it makes its gameplay very unique in a way that was never done before. With air drag, it kind of gives you a challenge with your time attacking, where you have to kind of focus on the level and see when's the best time to jump and when's the best time not to jump, because jumping can make you go slower. So if you want to use that jump to slow yourself down to control that speed you had originally, or you can usually just smoothly not jump at all and usually use that speed to get through levels faster. It's a very interesting mechanic, and I think it works very well when we're talking about Sonic. And I was going to talk about it in the first video, but I kind of forgot. We're going to talk about how to gain your speed a little bit faster. With gaining your speed, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is press forward and run, right? Yes, that is true, but there's actually a faster way to gain that speed. All you have to do is jump, and once you jump, all that momentum comes back down into your run, and it actually makes sense with how air drag kind of works. With air drag, you can see when I jump with air drag, it brings me back down to my base speed. So if you're pretty much standing still, if you jump in the air and that gravity brings you back down, you're clearly going to have all that speed that you have at your base come up easier because you have more momentum in the air. And I think that's a really cool mechanic when we're talking about Sonic. It makes him very unique and makes him stand out way more because now you have an easier way to gain some speed. Or you can use this, because now we're going to talk about the spin dash, the most iconic thing in any Sonic game ever, and it's pretty much used everywhere. With the spin dash, a lot of people kind of have a problem with it, kind of taking away that idea of maintaining and gaining that speed, which I can agree to some degree, but I think it makes it more unique because of the fact that that speed is only catching you up. For instance, if you're in a level and you end up at this part that you fail at, and instead of doing the classic Sonic 1 thing where you have to run back, gain that speed to go up that hill, you use a spin dash to get up there. It's way simpler and it makes more sense when you're trying to maintain that speed. And I think it works for this whole time attack slash speed running slash whatever you're trying to do with the spin dash. It works very well. Now, I know this isn't something that everyone really needs to know, but it is very good to know when you're trying to time attack. Stop spamming the fucking spin dash. It's not that hard. I'm not gonna lie, not everyone does it as of now, but I've seen a lot of people who have done it in the past and people who still do it, and it's like, dude, calm down. You don't need that many. All you need to do when you're doing your spin dash is press it 6 times. And what's cool about it is that whatever controller you have, you see how you have 4 buttons. On the Sega Genesis, it originally had about 4 buttons. So, of course, they all do the same thing. which is jump. So actually, if you really think about it, you can use 3 of those jump buttons to do 6 spins in one press. But of course, if you're playing with a new PlayStation controller or an Xbox controller, they're super big, thick, and meaty. So the best way to get past that is to basically press 2 buttons and you can get 3 spins and only 2 buttons. And I think that's a cool idea, and it's so cool that no one else does this. I don't think Mario does it. Well, Mario's a basic platformer. Well, now that we basically got all the new stuff out of the way, let's talk about the new character. Hold up, give me a second. Let's talk about Miles. Miles is an interesting case. Miles is really just a 2.5 character to the entire game, where he has nothing really special about him. He's the new character that's supposed to be the sidekick to come with Sonic and supposed to go with Sonic throughout all the levels. That's pretty much it. If you were playing the game back in the Genesis days, it was basically there to kind of have your little brother, your little sister, your little whatever play with you without it actually breaking the game and breaking how you play it. Because most likely you're going to be playing Sonic by yourself. And Miles, he doesn't really do anything too special. The only thing that Miles does is follow you and copies what you do. But even then, it's not that great because he doesn't even follow you all the time. You usually outrun him and then he literally has to fly back in every time. Wait, why the fuck can't you do that in the game? But besides that, Miles is a pretty fun character when he's not, because we have bosses and you can see here, he fucking kills you. It's not good, but Miles is like kind of a fun inclusion if you ever just want like a little buddy to play with you while you're running through this level, and it's like Sonic and Tails being friends, having friendship and running through the whole level with friendship, and you like that. So I do it too a lot. If you look at my gameplay, of course I'm using Sonic and Tails because I don't hate the concept. I don't think that the CPU is used very well. Now this is probably the point where I probably do the levels next, but I'll actually hold off on it for now because I actually do want to talk about that more in depth later on. So next we're going to go to is the boss. With the bosses, they pretty much suck. Nothing really interesting is done with them. The final boss is actually the only kind of interesting thing done here because you have no rings and you have to fight this enemy with a lot of health. It's kind of unfair and kind of very challenging with no real unique way of executing it and beating it faster, and it takes forever. It takes like 9 minutes to beat this without using the invincibility shield from Sonic 3. It feels very bad, and I would never suggest to play this boss ever because the bosses just aren't that fucking good. Now let's just move on to the special stages. The special stages are actually pretty interesting. I wouldn't say they're the most in-depth thing and they're the most best thing that gets Sonic's level design great. No, I would say it's more fun, but it does come with a lot of problems. If you're playing it originally, it looks like shit. I'm gonna be 100% honest, it looks like shit. It's not that good, it's not that great. I would generally not suggest playing it like it originally was, but the Christian Whitehead version does make it look way better. A lot of fundamental problems with these special stages is the fact that it's more about memory than it is about, like the Sonic games are, reacting or learning the levels to gain more speed. With the special stages, all you're doing is collecting rings to then get a chaos symbol, which is fine in concept, but it's not done very well, and I think it could have been done a little bit better. Like the idea that it's just you have to jump when they tell you to jump, it is very valid, but I also think you can predict the level design actually pretty well. If you actually look at how it's formatted and how certain things pop up, you can actually kind of figure out where the things are coming from. Now, this may be different for me compared to Pariah or Game Apologists, where they played it and they couldn't really figure it out, but at least when I do it, I know that when there's a certain ramp going up and we know there's bombs in a specific special stage, I know to jump over it. If I see a certain set of bombs placed in a certain way, I know that I have to go to this side, that side, and I kind of predict how it works. So I'm not fully going off of my memory of it, but I'm also going off the instinct of this is what I do next due to how this part comes up and how this part goes down, and I basically use that to my advantage more than anything. I know it's usually a more bigger complaint that you have to like memorize it by Pariah, but I think there is some way to predict it, and when we go into the levels, it does make sense why I'm talking about predicting things. When talking about Sonic stuff, of course we gotta talk about time attack, right? Yes, I'm putting this even earlier than the levels itself, because time attack is of course super fun here. It's actually way better here than it actually is in any other game. Probably not any other game, but it's way better here than it is in Sonic 1. In Sonic 1, you have good levels and then you have bad levels. And of course we know those good levels are Green Hill, Scrap Brain Zone, different stuff like that. And then we got the other side where it's the other shitty levels. Those levels are really bad, and then you play the other ones and they're really good. Like again, none of these are just fundamentally straight up bad. It's just bad for when you want a time attack. Because most of the time when me and Pariah are playing these games for time attack, we basically just play the levels we know very well and do the best we can to get the fastest time and do it as fast as we can. But then you have the other levels where you're like, okay, I'm gonna do it like once or twice and then I'm done. I don't give a shit that much because these aren't really that interesting and they aren't really that good. So when we get to this game, pretty much every level for time attack is really good and every level is really good. And I emphasize the level specifically is what I'm talking about now because we're going into the levels finally. I know, it took me a minute. I had to get through that because I really wanted to get to that point. Okay, and like I said before, none of these levels are specifically bad. I would just say some have some problems, like for instance, Casino Night Zone. I think it's personally pretty fun, but I do find the genuine level design to be very off and kind of not the best. The idea with Sonic kind of being about using your speed and getting the speed and stuff like that, it is kind of implemented here, but it's also that level itself feels very inconsistent in its consistency, if that makes sense. It's kind of the fact that you have all this pinball stuff and you can use it to launch and get to good areas, and you can use the bouncy things to bounce certain ways, which also does distract you and kind of delay you from getting through the level. And then you also have the slot machines, which are very fucking bad, and I think they should really be taken out, or there should be some way to skip it because the only thing you can do is sit there until they're done, and which will hold you up for multiple seconds, and that's very annoying for a level to do. I still find it enjoyable, and I did time attack it a couple of times, but it's not my strongest level I'd ever play. But this can also not be said for Metropolis Zone. I think Metropolis Zone is so good, and even the Game Apologist, when he actually made his video on Sonic 2, talks about how that level sucks, but I find it to be one of the most fucking fun. Especially when, before I played the game for this video, I actually did before use the elemental shields to get through the level way faster, and it was just so much fun to get through these levels in unique and interesting ways while using the shields to your advantage to get through these pointless enemies. You also have to manage certain robots to get through the level very well and actually understand what you're doing. Nick was struggling a lot and he didn't use the Sonic level design philosophy to actually get through it very well, and that's why he kind of failed at it a lot. Like a lot of the enemies can clearly be easily passed if you just use certain ideas to your advantage, which makes this way easier, like forgetting about rings and using shields at certain times and knowing when to keep them and when you can lose it but still to keep it. It's a very interesting level and I think it's very fun. Now I want to go on to Wing Fortress Zone, which is the least Sonic level ever. Not ever, but it's a Sonic level, but it doesn't do anything too crazy besides bottomless pits, which we'll see in another Sonic game that has to do with the classic era momentum style gameplay. At least here, it's done pretty well. I do like this one skip I always do here where I use this fan here to get to the top and then go through that, even though you can just use another way, which is actually way faster, and it does get you through the level pretty fast. Overall, it's not that much of a gravitas kind of level. I think how Pariah explained it was very interesting because he was talking about how the last level should be the most hardest and interesting and most depthful level, which I agree to. It seems that they made Wing Fortress to be just a visual thing. It was supposed to be visually interesting, visually appealing, and was supposed to get the players to be visually interested in, hey, this is the final level before the final boss. And then we have, of course, Death Egg Zone, which isn't actually a level, but it counts. But there's actually a mod on my mod loader that actually extends this out so you can get 50 rings and you can use a certain yellow hedgehog in this level. But enough about the levels themselves. I actually really wanted to get into this because it was the most interesting thing when you're going into a Sonic level, which I have up on the screen right now. Pariah's super good Sonic level design model, which I find to be the most interesting thing ever because it actually talks about what Sonic's level design is actually supposed to be and how it's supposed to work. As you can see here, we have a start and an end, but then you see we have a higher route, a middle route, and a lower route. With the middle route, of course, that's the main route you'll probably start off at. With the middle route, you can see that there's a lot of twists and turns here and there to get to the end of the level. And then you see at the bottom route that there's, of course, way more turns, way more twists, and way more stuff to distract you from getting to the end of the level. And of course, as you see from the top part of the level, you can see that the top part has the most easiest way. With the middle, it's medium, which means it's pretty much mediumly hard and mediumly easy to actually get through this, which you can see is pretty much used throughout literally all of this game, and pretty much every Sonic game uses these mechanics going forward. And it's very interesting when you're going through the level for the first time, you'll probably stay on the medium path. But then we have the bottom path, which is where a lot of people will probably actually be going if they fucking suck. And when they go to the bottom path, it's way easier than everything else on the top, but you lose that sense of gaining speed. But there are points in the levels where you can go back up, and we'll talk about that after we go over the hard mode. With the easy mode, there's a lot more twists and turns and a lot of stuff that slows you down, but you will get through the level way easier than you would in the medium or the hard. Now, going to the top route, of course, that's the hard mode. With the hard mode, you have to actually keep your speed and actually be able to manage it throughout the entire level. And this is used in pretty much every Sonic game up until this point. And with the hard mode, it goes into, as we see, being the green and the purples, which the green and the purples are clearly supposed to be reward and punishment. Getting to the high route is the ultimate reward, and if you can stay up on there, you will actually get through the level way faster, but of course, it comes with a lot of challenge. But as we see with punishments, during the high route, you can drop down into the medium route, and if you drop through the medium route, you can go to the easy route. With this idea, it's very interesting when you look at Sonic's levels, because it's all about maintaining and using that speed, and so you see here, these different routes are made to help you in that. If you go to the bottom, you don't get as little help as you need, and then if you go to the top route, you'll be getting as much help as the world will give you, but you have to be able to manage it. That's why it's kind of called the hard mode, even though it's not actually hard. You just have to understand what you're doing in the level and use that to your advantage to keep the speed and stay on the top route. Now, of course, this isn't the only way to beat a Sonic level. Different Sonic levels do different things, like have you win through going through the lower route, like in Casino Night Zone, which actually has you use the weird mechanics to make yourself go down to the bottom. But then there's also times where you can use that level design to get you to go to the top or to stay in the middle. Again, one of the interesting things that Sonic 1 does, kind of using this philosophy, is if you look at Spring Yard Zone is literally a level where you kind of have to stay in the middle and end up in the middle at the end of the level. Now, there is kind of a higher route to take, but again, it's all relying on you to stay in the middle path. Again, sometimes it'll drop you to the high route, and that's where you gotta stay for the whole time, but then it's like, hey, we gotta drop you down to the middle to get to the end of this level. Now, back to Sonic 2, this is where the level is pretty much used to its full advantage. Again, while using momentum is really the name of the game. Now, again, going into this, with momentum, it helps you get to higher routes than you would, and it causes you to kind of think of the levels differently and think of how you can do them differently. Because levels have a certain idea to them, which I will go over now, which I think is the best idea with Sonic games. Now, when going into this level design, you can actually kind of use it to get some certain ideas across, like what I'm gonna get through today. A lot of people think that the whole idea of Sonic is to kind of explore the levels and get to know the levels so you can beat the levels. Well, that's not necessarily true. There is a part to that, but overall, it's more about using your Sonic instincts, as I like to call it. With your Sonic instincts, it's kind of the idea of, not that. With using your Sonic instincts, it's the idea of predicting certain things so you don't fall to the bottom paths. Like for instance, there's like a chemical plant zone. As you can see here, you do these loop-de-loops and then you get down here and then you do these little up and down ramps. And then the most infamous part of ever playing Sonic 2, getting stuck in this purple water going up these platforms. Now again, when you get to the top of the platform, you've done it and you've celebrated your life's goal, and then you make it there and then oops, you gotta fall back down, bitch. And that is a part of the level design, if you actually know what it's talking about. Again, you had to use your Sonic instincts to actually work through this level. The easiest way is, of course, to take the bottom route idea, get through the platforming, get to the top, and then do it right and slowly take care of yourself until you make it to the next part. But if you do it the hard way, using your momentum to your advantage, you can actually skip this. As you can see here, when you're going down these 3 loops, you can see here there's a little launching area. And if you use that launching area, like in this example, you can literally skip that and just make it to the top. It's so fun and so easy, and it's very good when you're not just going straight to the right or just doing what they tell you in the easiest way. With Sonic levels, people always fall for passivity traps. This is the main thing that Sonic Instinct is about, because passivity traps are pretty much everywhere. And just like I showed you in Chemical Plant, it's there for a reason. It's to get the players to understand that, hey, you are playing a game. You have to focus on the game and actually use what the game game is teaching you to your advantage. Like I said earlier, if you just basically just play the game easy pressing right, you'll make it down to this bottom path where you have to climb all the way up through this purple water just to get out. But again, if you use your Sonic instincts, you can see from the level design that you can actually launch yourself up. Even another example, in Oil Ocean Zone, as you can see here, there's a part where you have to take this elevator down to the bottom floor to then go to the next part. But then you're like, wait a second, why do I have to do all that when I can just jump down and then go straight left and I'll literally just skip that whole part? It's so interesting because they want you to think of the level design and use that to your advantage. It's the whole idea of Sonic Instinct. With Sonic Instinct, it tells you to watch out for passivity traps and for level design itself, to use it to your advantage with speed. Again, time attacking or speed running. But what is passivity traps? Passivity traps are kind of traps for you playing carelessly. Like we just went over, you can press right all you want, but eventually you're going to hit a passivity trap. But if you use your Sonic instincts, there's some kind of way you can actually predict when a passivity trap is coming. Like for instance, if you're running through a level and then suddenly you see, oh snap, I just got stopped by something. Like this spring right here in Chemical Plant. If you go down Chemical Plant and go through this entire loop-de-loop, a spring launches you to the other side. But of course, if you know it's a passivity trap, you can jump over that spring, which you can always do, and you can use that to go through the rest of the level, skipping that passivity trap. It's a very fun thing that you can do, and I know a lot of people will probably complain it's too fast, but here's the thing, you're supposed to predict it. Again, if you're going really fast and you think that something's going to pop up, what's the problem in reacting? The reaction is right there for you to actually do it right and actually execute it very well. There is no limit to how much you can predict. And again, it's pretty much done in every classic Sonic game ever, where they want you to predict where you're going next. Now, unlike in the original game where they only had it in a very small screen where you couldn't see shit, in the newer games or in Sonic 2 Absolute, you can actually widescreen it and actually see more of the level, which actually makes the level design way better to go through. And you can also kind of get through the whole passivity trap. Again, it's easy to predict, but it's also easier to actually react to if you have a wider screen, which is why in my mod loader, like I said for Sonic 1 and now Sonic 2, the widescreen makes it better to react. Most Sonic games should have this at this point, but they never do actually after this. Most modders, I don't think, actually try to extend it much. Maybe one day in the future when I make those videos, they maybe will, or they won't, who knows. But knowing that makes this game so much more fun because you can actually predict certain things that are coming up and actually use those to your advantage to get through the level faster. And again, it's all about the ideas of time attacking and getting through it at a faster pace and doing everything your best and actually using these levels to your advantage. Again, I'm not gonna go over every example, you can go watch Pariah's video for that, but I wanted to get that idea across because I always use it whenever I'm playing a new game. If it's not Sonic Superstars, it's Sonic Mania, then Sonic Generations, any of those games where you can clearly see there's going to be a passivity trap, I always react to it. And again, it's a very integral part of Sonic's level design because it's not just about going fast, it's about using your brains to figure out how to go fast and what is the best way to go fast. Figuring it out, using your Sonic instinct. It's the best part of any Sonic game, and it's really good. Now the last thing I want to go over is Supersonic. Supersonic is a cool unlockable reward. You get it of course by going through every goal post and actually gaining Supersonic, and you have to have 50 rings. But there's also a cool little side quest you can do if you don't want to go through the normal level. There is a challenge in Green Hill itself where you can just go through the entire level gaining a bunch of rings just to get through the special stages, and there's 7 specifically in the level. There are literally enough for you to get through the entire level with all the Chaos Emeralds. But again, it all comes down to you and wanting to do that interesting challenge. Did I ever do it? No, but I may have for this video, who knows, we'll see in the editing, but I probably didn't. It's actually very cool to use your Sonic instinct to go through the level very well to actually find these signposts and actually use them to get all the emeralds before you get to any other level. But Supersonic himself is a very interesting character. He's not much but a broken Sonic, but it does call for some interesting gameplay when you're playing him for time attack. Supersonic in Sonic 2 Absolute specifically is a playable character, and if you play as him, you get a totally different new way to play Sonic in time attack. In time attack here, you get to break through the levels, you get to go super fast, you get to jump super high, and you can find new routes and new ways to get through these levels, and it makes it so much more fun than you would pretty much in any other game. And then there's also the idea, if you wanted, to maintain those rings so you can keep this super form so you can beat the entire level with Supersonic using these OP moves. Now, going to the most important part of this video, my experience through Sonic 2. Now, surprisingly with Sonic 2 compared to Sonic 1, surprisingly Sonic 2 was the main game I always went back to. Sonic 2 was such an interesting game to me because the whole idea of Sonic and Tails being best friends going on adventures, but also just the level design itself always stood out to me more than Sonic 1 or 3. Again, it was cool to see Knuckles, but again, just playing as Sonic and Tails going through fighting Dr. Eggman was just the coolest thing to me as a young kid, and I kept playing it because the levels were kind of more fun. Again, compared to Sonic 1, the levels here were more fun, and I actually did get past a couple levels. I really didn't. I only got past Chemical Plant. I kept dying at the purple water part, which is why, knowing how Sonic Instinct works, I'm like, oh, thank fucking God I don't have to deal with this anymore. And it's genuinely a fun fucking level now. I love that level so much. It is so fun now, and I genuinely think it is one of my favorites. It only really works now because of my prior experiences with Sonic 2, of course playing it in its quote-unquote original way with live and stuff like that, and so again, I could never get any further. But now, getting through all these levels now as a grown adult, it's of course super fun, and I can of course do this all the time, and of course going through time attack is always the peak of my experience. Especially, you know, with my gameplay, I can actually skip the bosses because I have a mod on my mod load, which actually skips most of the bosses, except for the Eggman one. That one actually has to stay there or it'll be broken. But other than that, it's really good. And again, just playing the levels as a kid, I would always adore these levels no matter what. But again, I can never get that far. I think the farthest I got as a kid was probably Oil Ocean Zone, and I was cool with that. When I got a little bit older and got to the Christian Whitehead version, I did get through pretty much every level up until Wing Fortress Zone. And then I couldn't defeat the Death Egg until a long ass time, but I did beat him, so achievement done. Now, of course, playing it lately, I know I have the best way to play Sonic 2, but this time you can play with Tails from Sonic 3, and you can play with Knuckles and the Drop Dash and the Invincibility Shield, and it's so fucking fun. I actually was surprised playing Tails throughout this game. He's actually really fun to play through in this game. He can skip a lot of stuff, sure. He can also like use his flight to kind of manage some stuff easier than with Sonic, and kind of gives him kind of a stop. Again, they're probably the most solid levels besides maybe Sonic 3, which we'll go into in the Sonic 3 video. Going through the Sonic games now with Sonic 2 Absolute, it is genuinely way better. Again, Origins is alright, but Origins doesn't actually do everything that we have here, and again, it's so good. Especially since there's so many levels that you can have fun with here, it's just so good. And then that's pretty much it from my experience. I think with Sonic 2, I do hold it very dear in my heart more than any of the Sonic games. I would say it's maybe my favorite classic game, but I may be lying. So, at least with Sonic 2 for now, it's a very good game. I could even say great. With everything that comes with it, it never really breaks the pacing too badly unless it's bosses or stages. All that really does make the full package of a Sonic game, so I can't judge it too badly, but I cannot say that I am not madly in love with this game and will come back to this game anytime I can. I already do. Even after recording this video, I still go and play this game over and over and over again, even though I also rather play some of the modern games. But this game is genuinely so good, I can never stop loving it and praising it. With Sonic 2, it holds more impact for a lot of people because it really got people into Sonic more than Sonic 1. Again, Sonic 1 was the origin, but Sonic 2 was the thing that kind of showed what Sonic could be. And again, Sonic will veer from this here and there later on in other games, but at least here, Sonic 2 started off amazingly, making a perfect sequel to Sonic 1. And of course, now we have to go into Sonic 3, which I'm kind of scared to get to, but I hope you enjoyed as much as I did, and thank you for seeing my experience through Sonic 2. I'm the game apologist and something Sonic 2. I actually don't know how he ends his videos anymore. I've genuinely forgotten. Sue me.